All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today at RG Podcast. It's actually going to be a little bit different because I normally have someone here with me, but today I just want to talk a little bit about the trip that I just recently got back from Europe. Specifically, most of these stories will take place from the UK, England, and so yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. But first and foremost, I definitely want to say that uh, someone who I have been talking to for the last couple of years, and actually is on one of the podcasts. It's called Empathy. His wife just died. He is an atheist, and I don't want to give away his name, but yeah, it's a really sad day. She just died yesterday. So if you're religious, you're atheist, if you could keep them in your thoughts, or if you're religious, keep them in your prayers. Yeah, it's a really sad thing because he has two sons, and I spent some time today talking to his son, and so I just want to wish him and his family condolences. And yeah, when we're talking about issues such as like morality, ethics, philosophy, religion, politics, things like that. At the end of the day, we do have to recognize that these events, these topics affect people in real life, and so we got to be very careful in how we talk to people, and just genuinely understand that these topics have real world consequences. So that being said, so I left December 6th and I got back December 20th. I started off in Kazakhstan. And I do want to say this, that I can genuinely tell you I utterly despise the the physical act of traveling. The physical act of traveling is might be something equivalent to someone who goes to the gym and exercise. Someone, obviously not me, but somebody who goes to the gym and exercises, and they genuinely don't even like to exercise, but they understand that it's something that they're going to benefit from. So they have to have some kind of discipline to go there, and maybe even to eat food that they don't want to eat, or not eat food that they do want to eat. And so for me, literally to getting to the UK took almost 2 days from like door to door, because I had a couple of layovers in Kazakhstan actually. And one of those times I got a chance to leave the airport and to go do some exploring. So, I mean, that being said, yeah, you wind up getting really sweaty, you're chugging stuff around. I got to the airport and I realized that there was some stuff that I forgot. For example, and I can't even believe this, I was wearing them too because I took off my pants, and I had some like warmers underneath my pants, keep your legs warm. And not only that, I had my portable charger for my phone, and I forgot that at home, and so my phone wound up dying a couple of times, and it wound up causing some serious trouble. So there's some stuff that I forgot, but nothing major. I mean, it's not like I forgot my passport. I mean, forgetting your passport would be the worst thing possible, right? So anyway, I wind up getting in there, and when I arrived to Kazakhstan, I thought, okay, I have like 6 hours or so, and you go outside, and like, man, it was really cold, and there's always, I guess for me, I had a reluctance whether or not I would even leave the airport, because I thought maybe I could just hang around at the airport. But I thought actually it'll be cool to go out and do some exploring. So I think on my way back, I had like an 8 hour layover, so I was able to see a little bit more. But I definitely was reminded how uncomfortable traveling can be. Sometimes you're trying to sleep on an airplane, or you're trying to sleep on a bench, and there's noises and lights, and it could be really uncomfortable. But for me, I always try to recognize that the end goal of what I'm going to accomplish outweighs the discomfort that I'm going to put myself through to actually get there. So, although I absolutely love the experience of going to different countries and to experience new things and meet new people, the actual physical experience of traveling is literally something I absolutely despise. I remember, just share one story before I went, when I went into Taiwan. When I got to the airport, someone was supposed to meet me there, and she was like delayed. And I remember just trying to go around and get onto the internet, and I was just thinking, like, what am I doing here? I'm this Mexican from America, and I'm here in, I guess it's technically China, but it just, I felt like out of place, like I didn't belong, kind of like a poser. But what I wind up experiencing there was an amazing experience. And so, but it's very frequently, very, very, very frequently, I have a sensation that this is going to be the last time I do traveling. And that's not an exaggeration. I literally feel like I never want to travel again. I have that feeling initially. Then afterwards, of course, I realized that it was completely worth it. But I am only human, and I get uncomfortable like everyone else, and sometimes second guess, my own decisions. But okay, so I started off in Amsterdam whenever I actually arrived, and I'm a member of a website called couchsurfing.com. And basically what it is that you can message people. I'm going to put this up real quick, but you can message people and you can stay with them. The website, just so you see, is www.couchsurfing.com. And the thing that this actually does is that you get to see a country basically staying at someone's house. And as oftentimes like what happened here was that somebody met up with me. They gave me their bike, which was amazing. They let me use their bike, and I came to their house, and I was so exhausted from like 2 days of traveling after seeing the city. And I woke up to them like, making me dinner, which is, I think the guy was like Colombian or something. And he made me some kind of Colombian like tacos, which is delicious. And so, yeah, that was a really, really cool first stop. Technically, it was my second stop, but this is the first, because I actually flew into Amsterdam. That's where my final destination was. But something happened there was that I went to the Anne Frank house, and right as you're walking by there, I was looking for a restroom. And just a side point, they all make you pay like 50 cents to use a restroom there. It's so annoying. But anyway, I was looking for a restroom that I found at a restaurant. And basically right by there was this church, and they just happened to be having a concert while I was there. And they have something there, which I've never heard of before, because like when I grew up, I went to we subleased from a Trinity Methodist church. Okay. So the Trinity Methodist church, they basically have like organs. Okay, organs are like a piano, and it's kind of like a piano, but it's a little bit different from a piano. So essentially, what wind up happening. Sorry.
Okay,
Okay, sorry about that.
wow.
Okay, so sorry about that again. I had to remove. This is echoing. Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna remove that. It's echoing. I'm sharing it right here. I'm trying to share the. Sorry. And this is still echoing. I'll turn my phone off. Okay, so here's what I'm trying to say. They had this organ, which I was trying to show the video of it, but this organ, most organs are like kind of like the size of like a piano. This one was literally 2 floors high. I mean, it was just gigantic. It was a massive, massive organ. And essentially, what wind up, you know, it's they're basically built with these big pipes, and the pipes kind of look like whistles. And so whoever's upstairs, like they're able to play the piano, but they're able to make a bunch of different sounds. Like it could become something like a trumpet, or a it could sound like a flute. It could do a lot of different things. It's not just like a regular piano. There's all these different levers that you could do all kinds of stuff with, which is amazing. So the reason why I'm saying this is because this was in a church that, if you have never been to Europe, this is probably, or if you've never seen, like, been into like a giant cathedral or just a giant church, this probably isn't going to make any kind of sense. But I would say that it's just, they're outrageously over the top as far as opulence. Like, there's a lot of decorations, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of gold. They're several, 3, 4 stories high. They have steeples that are really high. Like, they've put a lot of time and money into what they're doing as far as building this church that can be seen from like a very far ways away. They kind of want the church to be the first thing you're seeing from like a really long distance, which makes sense to some degree. But if you think about this, having to build up, having to hey, Don is saying they're impressive instruments. He says, don't mind me, I'll just react. He's actually one of the guys who I wanted to meet up with, but I didn't have enough time to meet up with him. But the point being is that it's a lot of work has gone into making these churches that are like over the top. They're really, really over the top. And while I was there, they had the organ going on, and I just kind of like, I was really tired as it was, but I kind of just went off into like a bit of a trance. And in this time, I had like a vision of one of the men who would have spent his whole life working to build this giant church. Back in the days, people lived to be 40, 45 years old. And this guy spent his entire adult life just coming in and day out. And literally that was his whole existence, was here building this church. And I felt like his frustration to go there every day, and even seeing his father go there as a kid. and that his entire life was dedicated to building this building that like didn't need to be built like this in the first place. And I felt that frustration that all these resources that were being poured into this building could have been used for so many other different things. For example, I saw like some years back that there was an organ, and I had no idea that organs got this big when I read this, but a church in America was spending something like $750,000 to rebuild their organ. Okay, and I after seeing that thing, I could actually understand why that would cost that much money. But before, I was like, oh, there's no way you could spend $750,000, rebuilding this organ. I definitely understand that now after seeing that. I really wish I could have put the video up on here. Hopefully, I'll try to do that right now. Maybe. I actually know how you could do it. I'll send it to myself so I could play it on here. I'll download it on Facebook. The point in saying all of this, because this was like a recurrent theme that I kept seeing over and over and over, which it hit some obscene levels whenever I went to France and to England. If you know anything about a place called Westminster Abbey, which I'll discuss more in detail when I get to that point of this podcast, but Westminster Abbey is the like official headquarters of the Church of England. They're like official church, and that was like 100 times worse than any other church I've ever seen in my life. But I'll get back to that. Point being is that this like one of the things you'll know about Europe is that a lot of people there have just like stopped going to church. They have seen the way that church has been used for a very long time, and they just simply like don't want anything to do with it. And I can tell you the first time I went to Europe in 2012. In 2000, I went to like 5 or 6 different countries, but I was an atheist at this point, and I was really happy to see all of these churches that have been abandoned. And I remember I went to one church very similar to what I'm talking about right now, and basically nobody, it was empty, and it had been converted into like a community center. And so now, people were just doing whatever in there, just anything basically not related to God or church. And so the places had, lived, they had been around for a really long time, hundreds, maybe some of them even 1,000 years. And now they were just being used. For example, one of the guys who I met up with, we went out to a church, a former church that was now converted into a club. No, it was actually a bar and restaurant, but it had been a club before. And so you just see this there, that like people have just had enough. Like they've simply had enough of this abuse of power and this opulence, and not really representing what Jesus was all about. And speaking of which, I got it up, so I'll show you this. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that really does it justice, but just imagine that thing was about two stories high. So the reason, I mean, there's a very specific reason why I'm talking about this, and I am going to get to a few other topics that I'll weave in here. But let's just say that I also got to go to Notre Dame, and the point of the $750,000 is just think about how many people could have been fed or housed for that much money, and they could have just used a CD player at their church or whatever. The fact that they were spending that much money to rebuild something that's totally unnecessary just goes to show that a lot of churches have the wrong priorities. Let's just say that. So anyway, Notre Dame. I don't know how you say it actually in France. I guess it caught fire and some of the roof had gotten destroyed, but they were rebuilding it. But I mean, this damn thing was so tall. It's like, if you would see how they had to scaffold this to even get to the top, I was just thinking they are putting so much time and resources into this. And it seems like that, I mean, if they had any sense, they probably would have just bulldozed that whole building and just restarted it and just say, we're going to build something simple and humble, maybe something that Jesus himself would have wanted to see built on this planet. But there's this showmanship. The word that I got there was pageantry. That's the word whenever I was in this like hypnotic trance. And the word I just saw was opulence and pageantry. Most of these churches, if you go there, you have people wearing giant hats and these robes. And that is literally like the thing that Jesus was talking about not wearing fancy things. And Paul even talks about it as well. And yet the things that Jesus had to say, most Christians don't even give it the time of day. And so basically I just saw like, yeah, man, I wouldn't want to attend one of these churches if I was in Europe too. And I applaud the people who've stopped going to these churches, because I'm pretty sure that atheism is pretty much closer to Christianity than these churches were. Because if you take a look at Jesus and the people who were against him the most, it was the Pharisees. And these would have been the people who were dressing nice and who had all this, pageantry and all these rituals and stuff like that. And so, I mean, getting on to another point to how this is related is that Westminster Abbey is the most egregious place I've ever seen in my life. And just listen to this. I mean, this is mind blowing right here, because if you look at it from the outside, it's like Buckingham Palace. Like, you look at it and you're like, oh my sweet mother of Jesus, this is so much more amazing than anything even relatively close that I've seen in America. But then I try to get there. I try to go into the church because I genuinely just wanted to go pray and like pray for the state of the church, honestly. And get this, they charge 27 euros to get in. Now, 27 pounds. No, pounds are even worse, because 27 pounds is more like $40. They're charging $40 just to get into this building, this church. And I saw that other places in the Netherlands where they're charging money just to walk in and like just to go to the top of the tower. It was absolutely repulsive. So yeah, that was the most. And just type it in, a Westminster Abbey. I'm gonna put it right here, Westminster Abbey. That place is, it's phenomenal. I have to say it's probably the most magnificent building I've ever seen. But at the same time, it's also church, which they do things like, I mean, this was creepy. This was genuinely really, really creepy. some of these churches that I went to have like dead people, like literally coffins. You go in there and the coffins are above ground. So these people, like, that is freaky to me. That is ridiculous. And if you think about this, they have up on the wall like some things that are like someone has made this donation, for this, or this thing was donated by this person. And the Bible's pretty clear when it talks about like not doing things to like get attention. So Jesus, for example, said like when you give money, like don't bang the drums and like try to get people's attention. And he even says don't let your right hand know what your left hand does. So the point of that is that they genuinely used like the promise of getting buried or having this thing with your to get people money, you know. And of course, the Catholic Church was selling forgiveness of sins as a way to make money to fund these giant, ridiculous buildings. So, I mean, I just have to say it was really, really disturbing to see this firsthand. Like, when I say disturbing, I mean, it was very disturbing. Like, very frustrating. As an American, as a Christian, I've never seen something like this before. So, yeah, it made me feel disgusting seeing some of this stuff. On a different note, I do want to talk about changing this up light for a second. I do want to talk about some of the things I've seen overseas that are really cool and really thoughtful. Whenever I was in Greece, in the movie theaters, about halfway through, and not exactly halfway through, like if there's some action going on, they wouldn't do this, but they give you like a 5-minute break. And so I'm someone who has a small bladder, which means I normally use a restroom about 2 times during a movie. And so knowing that you're going to get this break and you could go use a restroom, or some people probably smoke, it's brilliant for the theater because people buy stuff, popcorn, soda, not chips, but candy. So and that's a brilliant thing. I would love to see that adopted in America. They give you like 5 minutes. Another thing too is, speaking about bathrooms, is I personally have like a public bathroom like phobia. I really hate the idea of being next to someone, especially if I have to poop or they're pooping. It's really uncomfortable for me. So I try to plan out my bowel movements to where I don't have to use public restrooms, but it obviously happens. The amazing thing about most restrooms in Europe is that the doors go from top to bottom. So like you can't see, like no one could come and peer over and see you. They can't peek at you from the top because the door literally goes to the top, these giant doors, and you can't see under the stalls. It's kind of weird why they would have stalls set up like that in the first place, but that's something that I really like about that. Something that I found out in every country pretty much except for America is that the denominations have different sizes and color. Have any money around here right now? In Korea, for example, the biggest note that they have is 10,000. No, I'm sorry. It used to be about $10, but it was like the biggest note, and then the notes progressively get smaller, and they're different colors actually. So it kind of looks like you're handling Monopoly money. But most countries do that. They'll have different sizes and different shapes. So it makes it really dang hard to confuse, bills. So you could potentially have like a stack of hundreds and mix in a few like $1 bills or $10 bills and trick someone. But you could look at at 100. Let's say you had 10 Korean notes of $10 or 100 of them. You could very quickly look at that and see a $1 bill, because it'd be a lot smaller and it'd be blue, which, yeah, it would be very easy to see. So that was really cool. One thing here about South Korea is they use scissors for food. And for example, Koreans are pretty famous for barbecue. So they'll take tongs and they'll take the meat and just cut it with the scissors, and it's so much faster than trying to cut that thing with a knife, and you can make it very precise. And you could basically, I mean, you got to try this sometimes. Don't just use like house scissors that have like glitter or glue on them. They have very specific knives that are used for food, but they also cut like kimchi, and you can do all kinds of things with scissors with food. So those are some pretty cool things. Yeah, let's see what else I want to talk about. Yeah. Okay, so keeping a little bit lighter of a topic, and then I will end off on a more heavy topic, but also the World Cup was going on while I was in Europe, which is crazy, absolutely crazy, because we have some fans in America for football and basketball and stuff, man. Oh my God, you've never seen fandom until you've seen how crazy people get for soccer in Europe. I mean, it was positively insane. And I don't use that word insane lightly, but I've never actually saw like a soccer game before. They say they call it football, but I've never seen an entire one in my life. I mean, probably like 2 times I watched maybe like 10 minutes of it. I'm like, I just cannot get into this. But because I happened to be there, and the people who I was staying with, everyone is really into it. And it was kind of a groundbreaking thing because it was being held in the Middle East. So that was like a first. So it was historic. And I happened to see the game where like France was playing England while I was in England, and England got eliminated. But oh my God, I mean, this place was probably, I would say, like 3 times filled to the capacity. I mean, this place head to toe was just jammed with people, and they were just going crazy, man. The last soccer game, football game I got to see was the finals, and I happened to be in Luxembourg for that. And so Luxembourg is like right on the border of France. So everyone there, well, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people there were rooting for France. But there were a lot of people there. I guess there were a lot of students there from Argentina. And I swear I should have uploaded the pictures. Maybe I'll do that right now, but they they went into, because I was in a Burger King at the time, and they came in with drums. Their faces were painted, man. They had flags and stuff, and they were just chanting, man. They were dancing, and even probably like 2 hours afterwards. And this is gonna sound like an exaggeration. I know this is, but 2 hours afterwards, they were still like driving around and honking the horns, and they had flags. So yeah, they took it pretty seriously. I will say that there were a lot of people, out celebrating, and it was a very interesting experience. I will say that. Actually, I'll upload it right now. So, that being said, as you probably know, I think Argentina won. Messi won. And although I probably never will watch soccer again, I will say that I had a much bigger appreciation for the actual game, like several games, and the skill that it would takes to like balance something with your foot and shoot it. I definitely wind up seeing that more. It's pretty exciting. It's some pretty exciting stuff. So, um, it was. I appreciate it. Will I be a fan? No, but I can understand why people. Just because the other thing is too is like just in general, I don't watch sports as it is. So kind of like soccer aside, I don't watch football or basketball or anything like that. I do watch some MMA. I will say that I do watch some MMA. That's mostly because my sister likes MMA, and it's something for us to talk about. But yeah, I do want to say that um, you can appreciate what something is without personally indulging in it yourself. So yeah, that was a kind of another strong point. Just to happen, I happened to be there while it was going on, and here's these people from. This is a Burger King, mind you.
This is a Burger King. Yeah. Messi.
Go, man. Let's go, Messi.
Vamos, Messi.
I honestly think if that would have happened in America, they probably would have called the cops on those people or kicked them out. But yeah, there were a lot of people excited about that. And I happened to be in France like the night before the World Cup. And I swear I've never seen so many policemen out at the Arc de Triomphe. They probably had like 1,000 police officers out and with riot gear. They had dozens, maybe hundreds of cop cars and ambulances. And I mean, it was just utterly ridiculous. They were just waiting for something to go down there. But okay, this is the high point of the trip. I do want to show a couple of things, and then I do want to get into the last thing I want to talk about here. This is me meeting some people, some atheists who I met on groups online. And yeah, I'll get into a little bit more of this.
Good day, mate. Hey, how you doing, sir? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, here we go. Make a little video for YouTube. Hey, mate. Hey, good to see you. Oh my God. These girls have me speak around you.
Hello.
Well, you're shorter than I thought, man. Hey, thank you guys. See you, my man. It's you, man. See you, buddy. Yeah. We'll do that, man. Good to see you. Do that. Good to see you. Hey, thank you, thank you.
So one of those guys, the second guy was former like co-host, and I got to spend the night with him. He welcomed me into his home, and it was a great experience. It was an absolutely amazing experience that he invited me into his house, and I got to spend some time with his family, fish and chips, which are delicious. And I brought some gifts for his family. He had some gifts for my family, and he's an atheist and I'm a Christian, and we were able to get along just fine. And he let me, as I said, he let me stay with him. He was very, very nice gentleman. The other guys, actually, kind of got off onto the wrong foot online and wound up doing some debating, and then we wound up just meeting in person, and we got along just fine. We can disagree on things and we can clash out ideas, but we don't need to bang on each other or show disrespect or hatred or anything like that. That's kind of been the whole motto of the podcast, is to be respectful, empathetic, try to see things from other people's perspective, and just be good people. We can be good people to each other. I'm not bragging on me, but this guy, who wife recently died, sent him a little bit of money today because, that just, it shouldn't matter if someone's Muslim or Jew or Hindu. If they're in need, if they're hurting, we should be there to try to comfort each other and try to help each other out on this journey as we're traveling through the universe at ungodly speeds that, we're on this planet together. So we really should be trying to help each other. Last thing I want to talk about is, I happen to be there staying with the guy, my former co-host. Meghan and Harry, their documentary dropped on Netflix. So we got to watch the first few episodes of that and a little bit of Downtown Abbey. But yeah, it was pretty disturbing. I got to say, I watched that series 3.5 times, and I listened to all of Harry's book, which is called Spare, in about a day. So it was like 15 hours or something. It was really long. But what's really disturbing about it is it deals a lot with a lot of the racism and institutionalized bias that they both experienced there while in the UK, in the royal family. I use that very lightly, royal, because they're just normal people. And man, this just gives you an example right here. This would be the number one reason why I'm a Christian, but I'm like a secular humanist as well. Because I believe that any involvement by the government in church or vice versa is going to be heavily abused by people. Okay. And I'm not interested really in the government side of this. I'm more interested from the religious side as a Christian. I'm more interested in the damage that's going to be done to Christianity. So, for example, as members of like the royal family, they literally don't have choice of what religion that they are. So Prince Harry had to go to church and had to be a Christian, but he himself was not a Christian. The Queen is like the head of the Church of England, and I'm not sure if they genuinely believe this or not, because I don't think they could be this delusional. I mean, but they genuinely believe that God wants them in this position. Like, they're the chosen people to be leading this church. People who have literally billions of dollars, obnoxiously big estates, okay? Just opulence, decadence, spoiledness in ways that is just completely unfathomable from your average person. I mean, many people in their commonwealth, their subjects, as they like to say, many of these places are very poor, and these places, they've taken lots and lots of resources and people. I mean, I studied history in college. I got to say, some of this stuff, seeing it firsthand with your own eyes, it's different, man. I gotta say, because I could have made these arguments prior to going there. I already knew the history of this, but I'm telling you, seeing it firsthand, there was just something repulsive and just disgusting about it. Now, I want to separate this from what I actually thought about the British people, because the British people were positively, unequivocally amazing. Absolutely. I got treated with so much hospitality. It was mind blowing. I mean, people there were so willing to help me. Couldn't always understand everything that they said, but still, they were just unbelievably like. As an American, I got to say that I was very impressed by their hospitality, their kindness, their formality, and actually, just just saying this, I'm not exactly sure what caused all of the problems that happened with Kate and Harry, because it might be something like a little bit of he said, she said, because there's definitely competing sides, and I can guarantee that if you were to talk to his brother William, he would see things just from a completely different perspective, and maybe both of them are absolutely right. If you take a look at RHE, it's two R's on top, flipped out on top of each other to try to see the other person's perspective. It's like when you see a 9, one person on one side is going to say it's a 6, the other one's going to think that it's a 9. And if you see things from a different perspective, you could probably totally understand that both of them, from their perspective, they're totally in the right. And these kind of situations happen all the time. If you go to like a marriage counseling session, you literally might have, both people thinking 100% of the problem is on the other person, and that they're not responsible themselves. And I can tell you this from listening to his audiobook, it is like so clear that both people were in the wrong in a lot of these things. It's beyond obvious. But one of the things that might have caused some problems is because Meghan Markle was American, and and raised by a minority. And I got to tell you this, as a minority myself, as a Mexican, I have been around Brits, and they thought I was just totally obnoxious, totally arrogant. And it could just be with the way that we're socialized. So there is some cultural elements here, some race element. And I was there to look into some additional material for my third book, which I'm releasing very soon, which is on race and racism. And I got a lot of good material there. But part of that is recognizing that the way that we're raised can really sometimes heavily contribute to the kind of people that we are, that what we think is acceptable, patterns, speaking patterns. And you get around people who are not raised in those kind of environments, it could be really uncomfortable. And for both people, both sides. I've lived in Asia 10 years now. And I got to tell you that I've made an absolute ass out of myself more times than I could begin to count. And luckily, I've been here this long now. It doesn't happen as frequently. But man, if you go to a different country for your first time, you're just living there, it is going to be uncomfortable. And I will give you one example. Oh God, this is pretty funny. Okay, this will be the last thing, and then I'll close off here. Maybe I'm gonna have to do a part 2 of this. But here's what happened. So we were getting ready to take a ferry on a bus from England into France. Okay, specifically London into Paris. So I was in a rush to get to the bus station, and I wasn't able to spend the money that I had in my pocket. So I had like £3, which is, it's about like 5 Korean dollars. And I was like, man, I can't believe I didn't get to spend that. I was like upset because I'm like, now I can't change this over. They're not going to change coins. Excuse me. So I was a little bit depressed, but as we got to like where they came out to check our passports and everything, and they actually just happened to have a vending machine there. So I was like, hey, can I go get some stuff? And they're like, yeah, be quick. So I got off real quick, added €3. I got some Coke, I got some potato chips, and I got some Kit Kats. And I got back on, and man, I'm telling you, I was so happy because I was able to use that money, because I hate wasting money while I'm traveling. So I was eating these potato chips, and I guess because I was so excited, I was chewing them really loud, right? So the British guy, he's checking people's passports, and then I guess he's looking at me because I can't see it because he's behind me, and he says, he goes, "Hey mate," he goes, "the way that you're enjoying those crisps," that's what they call it. They call them crisps, not chips. He says, "The way that you're enjoying those crisps," he says, "you're making me wish I hadn't had dinner yet." I guess that was a really polite for him to say that I was being really loud. So first of all, I didn't even realize what he was. I didn't realize he was talking to me because he said Chris. If he would have said potato chips, I probably would have got what he said. But as soon as he said that, because I didn't respond, I ate another potato chip, and he looked over and he goes, "I'm talking to you, mate." As soon as he said that, everybody in the bus like looked over at me, and my eyes got wide and I got like really embarrassed, and so I'm like started chewing them like silently, and I thought he was asking like for a potato chip, and I'm like, "Oh, here, do you want like a potato chip?" And he's like, no, he was refusing, but I realized in a very polite way he was trying to say like, "You're chewing a little bit loud, and I'm trying to do my job here." But that's just an example about how in Korea, for example, they do very, 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 very similar things, because they think that saying something too directly can be considered rude. They might say something in a roundabout way and dropping hints and hoping you get it. So anyway, that could have contributed to what happened with Meghan Markle and Harry. And I'm going to have to probably do a whole episode on that with some actual Brits on it. But all I got to say is that I firmly believed in secular humanism and keeping religion and the state completely separated. But that was reinforced like 10 times going there. One of the things I saw that was so disturbing was that there were these two churches that were like literally right across the street from each other. And okay, sometimes you might see that in America, one church over here, one church over here. But this was like a two-lane street, and both of these churches were just facing each other. And now they were both out of business, and they just had some really backwards priorities that just for the record too, a lot of these churches are being bought up and turned into mosques by Muslims, because people are just tired of that fake, phony pageantry. I don't blame anybody in the UK for not going to church. Unless I was going there to visit, you wouldn't catch me dead in one of those churches. As far as attending there, now I might go there to pray, I might go there for an event, but there's no way I would go to that on a daily basis, knowing what I know about the Bible and what I've experienced, because it's all about showmanship, and it's just really disturbing. It's really disturbing that Christianity has come to that in Europe, and that many people have walked away from it. But seeing it firsthand, I completely get it now. So those are some of my thoughts that I had. I want to thank you for joining me today, and hope to see you back again. I'm going to leave you with this outro. And it's like 2:30 here in the morning here, so I'm not exactly 100%. So I am going to have to do part 2 of this. But yeah, this is some interesting stuff. There's way too much to share in one video, so I'm going to have to do part 2. and definitely get into the Meghan Markle situation a lot more, because this actually plays a really big part in the book. So you have a good night, and yeah, thank you.